Hey there, I know you're on a journey from grief to growth, just like I am, and you may be looking for tools to help you live a more soul-aligned life. Well, head over to my Grief to Growth store. It's your one-stop shop for inspiration, for healing, and for transformation. Inside there, you're going to find some free resources to help you get started. You'll find guided meditations to calm your mind and reconnect with your spirit. You'll find signed copies of my book, Gems of Healing. You'll find my brand new Oracle deck to help you tap into daily divine guidance. And there's some powerful mini courses designed to fit in your busy life and move you forward one gentle step at a time. So whether you're deep in grief, seeking spiritual growth, or just ready for a reset, there's something waiting for you right now. Just go to grieftogrowth.com/store, grief2growth.com/store, and start exploring. Close your eyes and imagine. What if the things in life that cause us the greatest pain, the things that bring us grief, are challenges? Challenges designed to help us grow, to ultimately become what we were always meant to be. We feel like we've been buried, but what if, like a seed, we've been planted? And having been planted, we grow to become a mighty tree. Now, open your eyes. Open your eyes to this way of viewing life. Come with me as we explore your true, infinite, eternal nature. This is Grief to Growth, and I am your host, Brian Smith. Hi there, I'm Brian Smith, host of Grief to Growth, and whether this is your first time listening or you've been on this journey with me for a while, I'm really grateful to have you here. This podcast is a space where we ask life's biggest questions. Who are we? Why are we here? Where do we go when we leave this life? And how can we grow? Not in spite of grief, but actually through it. And today I'm honored to welcome someone I've known for many years. Her name is Fara Gibson, and her gifts and her generosity have inspired me and many others in our community. I first connected with Fara, I think through Facebook, but we're also friends through an organization called Helping Parents Heal. And Fara regularly shares deep, moving insights about the afterlife and what she calls heaven, and the enduring connection that we have with those who've crossed over. We've also crossed paths in person at Helping Parents Heal conferences, where I've had the privilege of seeing Fara do her powerful gallery readings that have leaves audiences in tears, comforted, and uplifted. Fara is a spiritual messenger and the author of 4 books, including Looking into the Windows of Heaven and Heaven is Within Us. Her work is rooted in her connection with spirit. And in this episode, she'll share her personal story, how her abilities unfolded, whether she's always been connected, and what role, if any, training or study played in her development. Those are some of the questions I like to ask her. We'll talk about soul plans, life purposes, and how even the most painful losses, like the passing of a child through addiction or drug-related transitions, can carry deep spiritual meaning. I'll ask her a question many of us wonder: where is heaven really? And how does she reconcile her spiritual work with the language of God, heaven, and soul? So whether you're early on your grief journey or you simply want to understand life beyond this one, this conversation is going to be both grounding and expansive. And after the episode, head to my Substack, which is grieftogrowth.com/Substack, where I'm going to post a companion article. It's a space where you can leave comments, ask questions, and connect with other listeners and with me directly. So with that, I want to welcome Fara Gibson.
Thank you so much for having me, Brian. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I can't believe we've known each other so long, and this is the first time we're doing this. So
I was going to say the same thing. I'm like, wow, he finally invited me to his show.
Well, the thing is, I know how crazy busy you are between the readings you do and the writing that you do. So I'm glad I finally got around to asking you.
In all honesty, I am. I'm extremely busy, but I really, truly am excited to be here and share with you and your audience.
Yeah. So Fara, before we get into everything else, tell people how did your abilities develop? What's your backstory?
So my backstory, I was born this way. I truly was born with this purpose and with this amazing ability. I call it ability because the gift is what I get to give to the people that I get to touch with it.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't understand it young, so I didn't have any training whatsoever or anyone nurturing or helping me along or embracing it. And honestly, I didn't tell anybody. I didn't know anything different about myself when I was little, so it's not something that I really kind of put anything together. I remember seeing Sylvia Browne and John Edwards on TV when I was a kid. John Edwards more really and he had crossing over with John Edwards.
Mm-hmm.
And it was on TV when I was younger. And I was like, whatever disease he has, I think I have that.
Hmm.
And, because I saw what he was doing and I was like, whoa, he's doing what I've been, seeing and feeling my whole life. And it really put a purpose to me trying to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I had no direction. It was very taboo back then. So it's not, and I will tell you, it was taboo in my home. So it's not like I could tell my dad, like, hey, I have this. And I went through a lot of turmoil growing up with, my life with stepmom I didn't have much luck with. She was extremely abusive.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, there's a purpose in that because she made me who I am and taught me how not to be a mom.
Mm.
And so I think it's hard to see the beauty within yourself when you're walking through that. But I think those were like wax on, wax off moments for me when I was growing up because I was going to need to be able to relate to the people that I would help later. So
Mm.
everything that I've ever traveled through was like a foundation. Late teens, early 20s, I started feeling compelled to stop people. And it was just this like, I have to say this to this person and stop them right now. And that's really when I started saying things from heaven, not really putting together that I was a medium. Nobody had ever said the word medium to me, and I realized that those moments that I was sharing with people were life-saving.
Yeah.
And that gave me an interest of understanding it more and working on developing it. And because I come from like the good old boy cloth and the old school, I was my dad's hunting buddy and his bird dog and all those things, I really was like, okay, well, if I'm supposed to throwing it up to heaven, like if I'm supposed to share this, you need to give me the knowledge with it. I don't want to hand people partial things that they have to figure out. I want to be specific and I want to, give them a foundation of like heaven exists and we exist after this. It's
Mm-hmm.
my job every day to prove that there's life after life in
Mm.
the physical sense. And so that was an important role for me to understand myself. Plus, I was going to be working with grief. So, there's a lot of founding stories that I repeat, and really the first time that I unnecessarily shared it was with my new husband. I was married previously, had a terribly abusive relationship, and that was great. Also made me strong and taught me my worth.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then when I left that relationship and I got together with my husband, Jim, that was really the first time that I shared it unnecessarily and kind of came out, so to speak, of because the people that I was sharing things with before, when those were life-saving messages, it's not like they're going to say to everybody in their circle, oh my gosh, you guys, I almost took my life. And
Mm.
Farah said this, and now I'm not going to.
Mm.
So those were private moments for them. And I wasn't saying anything. What am I going to do? Who am I going to tell? Because back then, again, it was still taboo. So,
Yeah.
and it was their private moments as well. But yeah, so yeah, at the motorcycle shop with my now husband, who was then my boyfriend, and it was a new relationship, and I did not want to mess that up. It was when I shared it unnecessarily for the first time. And I think that flow just, you know, made it so much easier for me to go, here I go. And
Yeah, I want you to tell that story because I tell it all the time.
yes,
To me, it's really amazing. But before we get into that,
yeah.
so when you were young, you said you've always had this. Were you seeing spirits? Were you hearing things?
So, I mean, I definitely like in that half wake, half sleep state would see spirits, but I don't typically see a medium connection is typically a soul connection. So it's not typically visual in front of you,
Hmm.
seeing things. I mean, everybody has different types of abilities.
Right.
Um, so what I see is almost like you seeing a memory. I will see it as if I'm remembering it.
Okay.
When I'm seeing visions in my mind's eye, just like I said, if you were trying to envision a memory of your wedding day, you could probably reminisce back to that. So I was getting memory visions that weren't mine. And,
Oh, okay.
and I was getting indications on my body. I would feel like, oh my gosh, like I can't breathe in my chest and my heart hurts. Or I got stroke symptoms one time and ended up going to the ER and they were calling code blue. They were
Mm.
like, she has stroke symptoms. Oh my gosh, and this was when I was much younger and I didn't have an understanding of it,
Hmm.
or I would feel like my head was affected, and but when they did when I went to the ER and they did all that, they were like, oh, she's fine. And I was like, what is going on? And they were saying the same thing. And I realized then after that, some years after that, because I'm not a sissy lala chick and I'm not a hypochondriac, so I was like, what the hell is wrong with me?
Hmm.
And I realized that I was getting passing indications on my body for spirit, kind of giving me the indication of how they passed.
Hmm.
Definitely not something they carry over in heaven, just trying to be specific with me, like I asked. Um, I was like, you're gonna
Yeah.
have to be specific so I can. And sure enough, they were. And, I started understanding a control of that because if you can you have those things and you can acknowledge that you have them, then you can start setting boundaries and say, I was starting to say, if this is not mine, I need to know that I'm not having a stroke. So maybe lift this off if I say lift this off. And sure
Right.
enough, they listened,
Okay.
or and it just kind of snowballed. But yeah, so I see things in my mind's eye. Communication with soul is silent. We don't have vocal cords and bodies in heaven because we've stepped out of the car and now we're just that spirit driver that has stepped out of the car.
Hmm.
And so it's a thought process or a knowing that just kind of comes at me, and basically to like explain it easily, and I would think back to them. But the cool thing about that is I take notes during all of my readings.
Hmm.
I typically take 6 to 8 pages of notes. So I'm using my human taught hand with my human pen and my human paper, using my brain that I was taught to make those letters with to write those sentences or those validations down for my clients. While I'm writing and have my human brain completely engaged in that writing, I'm getting full soul communication at the exact same time of the next validation that's going to come through.
Okay. Wow.
So your brain is very, very separate from your soul communication, but it feels the same.
Okay. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so you said before, you said you the first message you gave unnecessarily was at the motorcycle shop. Before that, were you like, would you get a sense like this person's going to take their life if I don't intervene?
I wouldn't get a sense that they were going to take their life. I would just get this like the best way to explain it in the feeling that I would get is, and I always break it down like this. Like, let's say that you found out that your best friend's wife is cheating on him.
Hmm.
And you know who it is that she's cheating with, and you just found all this information out, and you just saw your best friend for the first time since you found that information, and your friend doesn't know yet. Now you have this coming out of your like soul skin of like, oh my gosh, I need to tell him, or do I tell him, or like, the impact of me saying something might
Sure.
not
Yeah.
reflect good on me if they're not open to me saying this, all of those things kind of, and then I would just be like, but I have to say it. And so I would stop people in moments. I made a phone call once, and this was in my early days. I made a phone call to somebody in the family. I'll keep that private,
Hmm.
but I was like, I have to call you right now. Like, I don't know what it is, but your mom came to me yesterday, and I was not announcing that I was a medium or anything, but I was like, she said that she was at her grave with you yesterday, and that she heard you, and there was other specific things that I said
Hmm.
to kind of catch his attention, and he didn't even know this about me, and he was really, really quiet, and he was taking it in, and after he took it in, he said, Farah, I was at my mom's grave yesterday and it was just me. And I was telling my mom that my marriage is really bad and that my finances are really bad. And I was going to take my life. And
Hmm.
I needed to know that my mom could hear me. And you're
Hmm.
calling me this morning. And so it was moments like that that kept me driven to say the things, even if I felt weird, because
Yeah.
I mean, it's not something that was normal for somebody to just stop you out of the day and say, "Hey, I talked to heaven,"
Yeah. Yeah.
and yeah.
Well, it's interesting to me, Farah, because we see some of the celebrity mediums on TV and they walk up to people in the grocery store and they read them. And people will complain about that because they say you should never give a reading that's unsolicited. But you said you were given this ability to use in this way.
Yeah, so there's two things with that. One is people ask me all the time, do you do readings in stores and in restaurants and blah, blah, blah? I'm like, no, typically I'm shopping or typically I'm eating in the
Right.
restaurant, right? It's not like I'm going. What people forget in watching those shows is they have a film crew
Yeah,
that's going in to capture that moment
exactly.
for the show.
Right.
So could I, if I ever wanted to do a reality show, which I will not, just so we're all clear, um, um, could I absolutely do that with okay, like we're going to go into this Fry's grocery store and we're going to, I'm going to stop somebody, as I feel compelled and come on with me, but that's not being said on, on their shows and stuff. I love the foundation of that because it does introduce mediumship to the world. It made it a little bit less taboo.
Hmm.
But at the same time, it's not what I do all the time. If
Right.
I've learned over time, if I have that coming out of my skin feeling of like, I have to stop this person in their tracks, heaven knows what they're doing. So,
Hmm.
as much as it would be unsolicited for me to stop this person's day, I've never had one time that happened that it wasn't embraced with love
Right.
and need. And
Right.
so I just have strong faith that like heaven knows what they're doing. They're just, putting me in the right place at the right time for that moment. And I embrace it. I'm always on for that. Everybody always says, is it always on? And I'm like, or can you shut it off? That's actually the question that I get.
Right.
And I'm like, I would never want to shut it off because I might miss an opportunity to help save a life.
Hmm. Yeah.
So,
So I'm also curious, Farah, because you use the word heaven and you use a lot of language that we might consider to be religious. Do you have a religious background or religious faith, or what is that for you?
so I have never belonged to a specific religion. I was raised with my father. My dad was a single father, some of my life. Those were the best years. And my grandmother was Baptist Christian.
Mm-hmm.
And I did a lot of going to church with grandma because I spent a lot of time with grandma to get out of my dad's house with my stepmom. I love my dad, don't get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and my mom's side of the family is LDS or Mormon.
Oh.
And I spent a lot of time going to the Mormon church growing up as well. And there was always little bits of church that resonated with me. And none of them that resonated with me as a whole to say, like, I want to do this because
Right.
when people start talking about God as judgmental for me, and I do believe in God, I absolutely, and I just, I know people call God different things, whether it's universe or, like there's so many different
Mm-hmm.
names. Um, but there was parts of it that resonated with me and parts that didn't, like anything negative that it was ever said, like judgment and, like do this or else. The or else didn't make sense to me. The God that I knew and know, even then when I was little, was all loving and just so supportive in our journeys. And so I was like, well, that doesn't make sense, or that doesn't make sense, and then there was, the LDS or Mormon side where they're not as judgmental,
Mm-hmm.
but they're very family oriented. I love that. I love a little bit of every religion because in any aspect, people are finding faith in this difficult world that's so hard to navigate. I think that's a great thing. But I always say take what resonates within each religion and hold that. And if something doesn't resonate, set it aside because
Mm-hmm.
your soul knows. And so I absolutely believe we have come from heaven. And I feel like we're all made of the same beautiful light. And I feel like we're all made in God's light. And but as he created us, we were created in very different levels of light. So angels are some of the highest level of light. Jesus, which is he is so profoundly beautiful to everybody, and he should be because he would be one of the highest levels of light, closest to God's likeness that's ever come to drive one of these cars. But
Hmm.
I don't believe that Jesus died for our sins. Your mistakes are meant to be. Your stumbles are where you grow. I think he was murdered for his beauty. He was so beautiful, and there was such a need for control back then. And so for me, there's parts of things that I'm like, yes, yes, no, 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 yes. Um, so yeah, I've never belonged to a specific, I never got baptized in the Mormon religion. I actually used to volunteer at the Baptist church church camp in the summertime to help work with the disabled kids. And I was teaching them archery and stuff. And at the end of church camp one year, Pastor Mike said, does anybody want to accept Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior and, get baptized? And I raised my hand. It was the first time I ever did that. And I was like, you know what? Pastor Mike looked at me and he said, Farah, you're not ready. And I was like, wow, well, I guess if Jesus won't have me, who will?
Yeah.
But so there was a lot of things that didn't make sense to me. And so I just hold within me what does make sense because I have such an amazing connection with heaven that I
Right.
don't have a need to dive into a specific religion, if that
That
makes sense.
that makes perfect sense to me. The way I think about it, and I did grow up in a fundamentalist church and
Yes.
was went through all that stuff and everything. And now the way I look at it is like religion is like training wheels. I think it can be a good start for a lot of people to put you on the right path, but I think people like you and other people, we tend to outgrow that. It's like we don't
Yeah.
need that container anymore. So it's a good pointer. It's a good way to get started, maybe, but some of the stuff just doesn't make sense.
No, I think that it's best said that spirituality will bring us together and religion will divide us.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be divided. I want to love everybody, embrace everybody. I embrace every religion. I work with people from every religion, whether it's Mormon or Catholic or Jewish or Christian or, there's so many different religions out there. And I think they're all beautiful. And the truth of it is we're all one.
Yeah.
And so if we can just understand that and embrace that everybody has different thoughts and views on that and not have to debate it and fight it, like, why do I have to shove my views down your throat?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm glad we had that conversation because I know, like I said, you use a lot of the language that people might think of. Oh, she must be Christian because she says heaven and she says God,
I
but you're
do.
just using the language that you kind of grew up with.
I'm using the language that I just know within. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, as we're created in that light level, I guess I just didn't finish that, but as we're created in those different levels of light, we have the ability to grow our light level to be more like God's level of light. And
Mm-hmm.
that is actually the entire purpose of us coming here to this world and living. Everybody always says, like, Earth is a school, we're learning and growing. And most people don't debate that. They're like, yes, it's a school. We're learning and growing. We get that, but nobody's answered why. And the
Yeah.
why is because as we're learning and growing in our journey here, we're growing our soul to be at a higher level of light. And we are navigating these difficult moments for that purpose. So those people, and I know you said we'll talk about soul plans and all that stuff, but we're given the ability to write a life here on earth and navigate the things that we write within that soul plan. And my blueprint, my soul plan for my journey is my intention for my growth. And
Mm.
I'm not bigger than your blueprint, and you're not bigger than mine. So the people that we sit in the soul circle with, our family and our friends, and all of those people who are going to join us to be a support in us attaining that growth that we want to achieve, they write very different dynamics in their very own soul plan as well, where they're going to support you and they're going to be this role for you in life. Somebody has to sign up to be the villain.
Mm.
You can probably think of the villains who have signed up in your life. But when somebody signs up to be the villain, we'll take my ex, for instance, because he was a great example of that. He beat me and spit on me for 17 years and told me
Mm.
how worthless I was. Some people in the earthly sense would say there's a special place in hell for somebody like him.
Right.
I actually don't believe in hell. I think this is as bad as it gets. But the truth of it is he signed up to be the villain to grow me the most. And I needed that. I needed that growth and I needed that abuse and I needed all of those things because when I was going to help people in this world, I wasn't going to be able to relate to them if I walked in holier than thou shoes and never been through anything at all and go, you'll be fine, And so I can go, no, I've been through more than can make a billy goat puke. I get it. But if you
Yeah.
can find the beautiful in every terrible thing that you've ever been through, there's your growth. And so, when I get back to heaven someday, my ex will be there with me. And as much as in life, I hope he steps in warm gum, because if that reflects back on me, I'll buy new flip-flops. He's not a good person in life, but he wasn't meant to be. So people say, oh my God, he's gonna, have so much remorse or regret. And the truth of it is he played the role that he was meant to play and he played it well.
Oh, wow.
And, there is free will that he had to approach that role and he took it to the nth degree a few times. So there'd be moments of growth for him, like, ooh, could have been a little less there,
Yeah.
as we do a life review. But yeah.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Grief doesn't follow stages, timelines, or rules. And if you've ever wondered, am I doing this right? You're not alone. That's why I created the Grief Check In. It's not a test. There are no right or wrong answers. It's simply a gentle way to understand how grief may be showing up for you right now. In just a few minutes, you'll gain clarity and language for what you're experiencing without judgment, labels, or pressure to move on. If you're wondering where you are in grief, this is a safe place to look. Go to grieftogrowth.com/check-in. That's grief, numeral 2, growth.com/check-in. That is a hard lesson, for people to hear
It
because they'll
is.
say, well, you're excusing bad behavior.
But if bad behavior is intentional for us to grow, somebody has to deliver the bad.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, you're here to navigate obstacles. There's no negativity in heaven, or, whatever anybody calls it.
Yeah.
There's no negative thoughts, feelings, emotions. Jealousy does not exist. We have to separate our human experience completely, because it's really hard for us to wrap our human minds around these things and look at the
Yeah.
spiritual opportunity for it for us, so everything that we navigate is nothing that exists in heaven when it comes to anything negative or difficult.
Yeah.
So some of the spirits with the most intention for growth will write, I can go through this, including the loss of a child in the physical sense. Holy crap, you guys are spiritual badasses. Because that is not an easy road to navigate. And your children said, you know what, I'm willing to bless you with that growth. I'm going to graduate first. It's going to be the hardest thing you've ever navigated through. And you are not bigger than your child's blueprint, and they are not bigger than yours. So it's really hard to explain those dynamics too when it comes to somebody passing, at the hand of somebody else, at times, like whether it's a drunk driver or, I've told a story about war, right? So, and I will actually tell this one really quick to kind of put that in perspective, because I just mentioned, like, what if somebody passes at the hand of somebody else?
Yeah.
I did a group reading one time. And I go to this group reading, and then there is a gentleman that's probably in his late 60s, sitting in his chair, arms folded. He does not want to be there. He's scowling at me from the time that I walk in the door. There's 10 people that I have to get to in a 3-hour time frame, and he's number 11. So he's really not somebody that I'm supposed to read while I'm there or give validations to. His wife had wanted him to sit in and just listen and just be there. And he made that very clear. He's like, I'm not part of this. My wife just wanted me to sit here. And I'm like, oh, man, I'm proud of you for sitting in,
Yeah.
And I go around for 3 hours and do readings for all the other 10 people. And at the very end of it, I looked at him and I said, can I come to you? And he goes, give it your best shot. I thought, game on, let's go. Because what I was seeing was so profound, and I knew it was going to reach his heart. And I said, I have 2 Vietnamese soldiers that are coming through. One of them says that you slit his throat from left to right. And one of them says you stabbed him twice in the chest, and all you had was a pocket knife. And that man sat in that chair, and tears were rolling down his face. His mouth's wide open. His wife whips her head around. She's looking at him like, what the hell? She's never heard this story. And I always take pause when I'm trying to, decipher what I'm seeing. And I said, were you loading bombs onto planes in that war? And he sits back in his chair and he says, I don't know if I can cuss on your show.
Yeah.
He says, did you know that? And I said, well, they're showing me the job that my personal husband did in the Air Force, and he loaded munitions onto planes in Korea years ago when he was in the Air Force. And so it tells me you did something different, similar to that. And, and he cried and cried and cried. And there was things that I gave him about his kids, that they were currently doing, but there's no way that I would know, and things like that. And then he started to validate. He was like, yeah, he was in Vietnam. He was on base. It was not supposed to be a combat space. He was loading the munitions onto the planes, and 2 Vietnamese soldiers had snuck onto base, and he had to take their life in hand-to-hand combat, just as they had said. And he had passed them to heaven, just as they had said. And then he moved to a place of why. Why would they come through for me? You brought moms and dads and kids through, and, all these people. And I said, because they love you. And he sat back in his chair again, and he goes, what do you mean they love me? I killed him. And he's just crying. And I said, yeah, but as you sat in heaven and you wrote your soul plan, you wrote that you were going to sign up to be in the military for the United States of America on your soul journey. In that navigation, in that military time, you also wrote that you were going to join that Vietnam War that a lot of other souls were planning to be a part of in that time, to walk through the most difficult journey. And I said, and as you wrote that, you also wrote that you were going to be a hero for the United States of America in the Vietnam War. How on earth were you going to be a hero for that war if nobody wrote to meet you there? Those men were also in heaven at the same time, writing their soul plan to live a life in Vietnam. They were writing to join the Vietnamese military. They were writing to join the Vietnam conflict in their country that they were going to be present for in their lifetime. And when they wrote their soul plan, they wrote that their graduation day to heaven was going to be to pass as heroes for Vietnam.
Oh, wow.
How on earth were they going to pass as heroes for Vietnam if you didn't write to meet them there?
Hmm.
And so and it's funny because you shake your head at that a little bit and you go, oh, wow, that's really cool. And that's the reaction that I love that moment happened, because it gave me an example of saying, now I can say the same thing for somebody who did pass, at the hand of a drunk driver,
Yeah.
because it is not an easy life to write, to be the one that is going to be responsible and have to hold space the rest of their life for being an alcoholic, for taking the life of somebody and holding that burden, possibly going a prison route and all of those things that may come with that in life.
Hmm.
And they do that out of love for the family that they're touching. And that is the one that's really hard for our human minds to wrap around, because soul plans are so intertwined. It's interesting.
It is. It is very interesting, and another thing that because I know you do so much work with helping parents heal, and
Yeah.
so I would do want to ask you, why do you know why you're so attracted to, I mean, helping probably the most difficult people to help. I know other mediums that have been part of the organization that they get burnt out and they just can't keep doing it because it's so hard. Why do you feel so attracted to it?
I'm driven. I have such a profound drive to heal this world one at a time, one person at a time.
Mm,
And the foundation of helping parents heal is so amazing to me, because I've seen a lot of grief groups in the time that I've shared my abilities. And most grief groups that I've seen are very, very heavy, very grief focused. And and what I found about helping parents heal, or honestly, I didn't even mean to be a part of helping parents heal. That happened on a whim at a yoga studio. Elizabeth was walking out of a yoga studio when I was walking out of doing a 3-hour reading.
mm,
And, and heaven put us in each other's path when helping parents heal really just had kind of started.
yeah.
And when she talked to me about the organization, I was like, helping parents heal. Huh, that sounds much better to me than focusing on grief,
Yeah.
and the loss and them not being here. So a lot of the other grief groups that I had seen, and I used to do a lot of writing and try to share it to like the grief toolbox and some of the places like on Facebook. And everybody was like, today sucks. It's a terrible day. And you're going to have those days in grief. Don't get me wrong. But then I would see everybody else going, yeah, it does. Life's terrible. I hate this, blah, blah, blah. And it was just negative, negative, negative. And I didn't see anybody jumping into action to lift any of them. Like,
Mm,
I got you. I understand you. If you need me, I'm here. But helping parents heal had that.
yeah.
Helping parents heal had parents that were having a terrible day and other parents going, I got you. Do you need to call me, or, can I lift you? And they were focused on signs from the kids and, creating art projects to honor their children and, really kind of giving your focus to living with your children in spirit still at your side. And that made sense to me. But, and then there's the dads group. I was literally just telling my husband last night, women, we're emotional beings, and we're more apt to be okay with wearing our emotions on our sleeves and
Hmm.
have this, network of other friends that we're not, we we're not without. But men, in my observation, because I come from the good old boy cloth, tend not to wear their emotions on their sleeves, tend to be the one that has to hold the family up and to hold up the wife who has also lost that child, or to hold up the other kids that are still living and lost their sibling in that sense. But where did the men have to be for their lift, for their
Yeah.
support, for their help? That dad's group that has developed over the years with helping parents heal has my heart, because those guys can't just go in their everyday work day and talk to all their coworkers about, like, oh, I want to talk about my daughter today, or I did a reading with a medium and oh my gosh, you should have heard. Some of them have friends that they can talk to about that,
Right.
but in the everyday normal, like business world or construction world or wherever it is that they may work or their friend circle, if you haven't been through it yourself, you don't understand it. So having a place to be where these parents are all a community of love it has my heart. And I will never, I mean, I literally work from 6 a.m. until 11 o'clock at night, whether it's writing, answering questions, sharing things,
Yeah.
I tell everybody about helping parents heal, and I'm not on the payroll.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I don't do it because I get a kickback for it. I do it because I love giving opportunities for people to find an avenue to heal.
Yeah. Well, I was saying we've only met a couple of times in person,
Yeah.
and it's been at the conferences, and you're like a light. You're not like a light. You're a light at the conferences. Just the energy that you exude and the way you lift everybody up with your spirit and delivering some of these really difficult lessons, like your child's life has a purpose.
Yeah.
It's not random. They weren't just accidentally killed by a drunk driver or a drug overdose or
Right.
suicide. These are all things that are part of the plan, and that could be so healing for parents, even though it can be such a difficult message.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think the more we know, the less we fear. And that's what's
Absolutely.
important to
Yeah.
me, because it's the not knowing, and maybe we are brought up in a religious aspect that has rules on, whether or not our loved ones can even see us,
Yeah.
or like they absolutely don't see you, they don't hear you, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I've literally had that challenge come to me numerous times, or, it just, there's so many different faiths and beliefs. Like, I've heard people tell me that they're like at their Catholic church, when their child took their life, that, oh, they're in limbo now. And I'm like,
Right.
whoa, wait, what? They're not in limbo, so, it's, and those are the little things that like add up, that I'm like, no, 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 because heaven, the millisecond that we pass, we are absolutely in pure perfection. For you are the one that it's devastating for. Them, it's their sit the heck down, guess how I got back to heaven story. And they are telling it, whether you're a part of it or whether you were not there, all those things. And everybody else in heaven's going, whoa, man, you went through it,
Yeah.
and it's just like a coming back together and an exciting story of their arrival back home. And for us, it's in the human aspect, it's terrible. I always say, take a step back to spirit when you get into those difficult shoes and find the beauty in it if you can, and ask yourself where you've grown from those moments, and that helps just a little. I
Yeah.
say, people focus on the way that they pass and the day that they pass so emphatically, because that's where our pain is sitting. And if you can take that and acknowledge it and absolutely immerse in it and feel it, for this moment, and then pull it just and set it to the side, and then try to replace that thought process with your favorite memory, the funniest moment that they ever gave you. Nobody's ever going to take their passing moment from you, but giving it your focus every day will keep you in a place of pain. So if we're working on healing, just set the pain of their passing day here. It's always
Mm.
going to be at your side.
Hmm.
Scoop up your favorite memory of their love and your favorite moment, and hold that for even if it's for 5 extra minutes than you would normally hold that. And you'll start to just really navigate your focus to the love and the presence that they have in your life, because they're still around.
Yeah. Well, I love what you said about the more that we know, the less that we fear. And I find that to be absolutely true. So, like a lot of us that have even grown up in church, we hear about heaven, but it's such this like nebulous thing. We never hear what it's really like. And I'll never forget my poor mother. I was talking to her one time and she said, well, I hear there's milk and honey. I don't like milk and I don't like honey. And there's streets of gold. That sounds awful. So, people take these metaphors and they take them literally because we have nothing else. So, for people that are listening, I want to talk about where heaven is and what
Yeah.
heaven is.
So actually, if you look down where your floor is, where your feet are right now, that is earthly floor. That is where my feet are. Heaven's floor is only 3 feet above our floor. They're in this space around us always. It's up, but it's not as up as everybody's always
Hmm.
looking to the stars in the sky. They are not past the stars. They are not past the sky. They are amongst you always. And I have a really kind of cool story to put into perspective what heaven's home is like too.
Yeah.
I had this friend growing up, KO, and I've told this story before too, but um, Kayla and Brian were these boys that lived around the corner from me growing up. And I spent a lot of time at their house. Again, it was, it was the neighborhood run around, play hide and seek, and then they had the cool house that had the bonfire and the parents let everybody drink in the backyard, when we were teenagers and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But when we were growing up, when we were all approaching our early teens, Kayla and Brian's dad passed from a lung disease that was really, really difficult. Those boys were just at that pivotal moment of like finding their manhood. They were turning into man cubs, and then their dad passed, and it was tough. And they kind of ran amok a little bit, and we lost touch for a while. And then years later, Ko found me on Facebook, and it was really cool. But when we were kids, Ko would always say, you know what, someday I'm going to have this majestic, like beautiful cabin, and it's going to be like on this amazing mountain with this view that is just so cool, and he's like, and I'm going to have a hot tub with hot chicks and bikinis inside my cabin. And I was like, wow, Ko, that's cool. Like, I just want to live on the beach, so whatever, like we were just talking about what we wanted, when we grew up. And so flash forward, Ko finds me on Facebook years later, and when he messaged me and we were chatting, I was like, man, how the heck have you been? And he's like, man, I have that same lung disease my dad has. And I knew what that meant because it was a very terminal lung disease. Your lungs just basically harden and stop, allowing your body to take in air.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was really kind of nice to be reconnected with him before he passed. And he did pass in his mid-40s. And it was really, really, so sad because I grew up with those boys, man. We had a lot of fun together with parties in their backyard. And so I had a dream visit. And the dream visit is so profoundly like vivid in color versus just a regular dream that just kind of wonky and weird and goes in directions. But after Ko passed, I had this dream visit, and I'm knocking on this big door at this cabin in my dream. And the door opens and it's Ko. And before Ko passed, he had really lost all of his weight. He was just really just like so skinny, and, kind of like how a cancer patient would look, if they had lost their ability to eat. And so as he opened this door in my dream, though, Ko looked beautiful. He was vibrant and healthy and amazing. And I was like, oh my gosh, Ko, you look so good. I couldn't get over it. I literally kept saying, Ko, and he's like, come on, Fara, I got to show you the view. And I'm following him into this door, and I'm walking behind him, and I'm looking around this amazing cabin. And I'm like, God, this is really nice. And he's like, come on, Fara, I got to show you the view. I'm like, Ko, gosh, you look so good. This is so cool. And as we're walking, he's walking me towards a back door of double doors, but we've got a little ways to walk. And as I look to the right, and there's a damn hot tub with hot chicks and bikinis in this damn hot tub. And I'm like, Ko, you have chicks and bikinis in your cabin? And he goes, I know, but come on, I got to show you the view. And he takes me to these double doors in the back, and he opens them up. And I literally lost my breath. I was like, oh, the colors were more beautiful than I'd ever imagined seeing. And the trees were nothing like we have here. And they were just the flowers, everything. And there was just this majestic mountain view. And I looked at him and I said, oh, Ko, this is what you told me about when we were kids. This is the cabin you said you always wanted. And he looked at me and he said, I know, but I didn't realize it was the home I already had in heaven. And I only came back to it when I passed.
Oh, wow.
It was the home he had before he came to live this life. It's why his focus was, I really want this, 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 this. Our human filters out the knowledge that our soul existed in heaven before we came here. But it was such another, like, I get the most amazing examples of how to put heaven in perspective with my experiences. Heaven's like, they got me. So it was really cool. I messaged his mom and I was like, oh my gosh, because I'm still connected with his mom and his brother. And yeah, so cool.
Wow. I love that. I'm a little confused by something, though, because I hear people say we don't have bodies in heaven, but then I hear that we can live in cabins and fish and hunt and golf or whatever. So how does that work?
I mean, we don't have solid bodies, but we have the appearance of having bodies. Yeah, we don't walk around as light bulbs. That would be no fun. We do have an appearance, and we can manifest anything. So, I mean, I literally do readings where they're showing me that they smoked in life and they're still smoking a cigarette in heaven.
Yeah, right.
And the cigarette's made of light. It's not the same impact. It doesn't stink. It's not causing cancer. And if it's something that they enjoyed in life, by all means, have your damn cigarette.
Yeah.
Or a beer. I'll see them toasting me with a beer, or something. So the things that when spirits have lived a life, not every spirit in heaven has lived a life. We're not made to live a life. It is our intention for our growth. And so when a spirit has lived a life, if they found something that they enjoyed, like golf or off-roading or whatever, I mean, we can fly in heaven, so we don't need to off-road in heaven.
Right.
We can. But you can manifest anything because it's just energy. And it's just, so we have the ability to manifest anything. That's why everybody's like, oh my gosh, I wish I had this. I wish I had this. I wish I had this. And I'm like, you know what? Just work hard for the things that you can attain in life and know that you need none of them in heaven. Because we have the ability to have anything that we desire. And we don't have greed in heaven. We don't have needs to be the most fancy and all those things, that vanity, those things don't exist in heaven. We just do things with love. Yeah. But yeah, you can golf, you can fish, you can do all those things. I mean, you're not actually killing and eating fish. We actually don't have a need to eat in heaven, but we can manifest food in a party type setting to, just enjoy space with others that we may have shared lives with. So it's why food is such a reward here on earth, and people are like, that's so good, because it is one of the rewards, but it's also got a hitch because you're here for growth and things are supposed to be hard, so it can make us have high cholesterol or gain weight or all those things. Like everything has a catch that we can enjoy here, and that's because it's life.
So I want you to tell the story that we started at the beginning. We kind of teased it, the story in the motorcycle shop, because I think it's so profound, and I tell it to people all the time.
This one does have one cuss word in it. Is that okay?
Go ahead. Yeah, go for it.
So I was newly dating my now husband, Jim, and we had known of each other at the phone company for 10 years, but we had never been together. And we had just started dating probably about 3 weeks in when he took me to the motorcycle shop. So there was a motorcycle shop in downtown Mesa. And it was a place that my husband, Jim, always spent time every day after work with his best friend, who he, calls his brother, Kenny. And Kenny's actually now passed. So Kenny he lived at the bike shop. He lived at the motorcycle shop. It was Knockout Motorcycles. And he had a dog who was a pit bull, a red-nosed pit bull named Poop. Kenny did. And Kenny lived at the bike shop with Poop, and he had an apartment built up in the rafters of this industrial bike shop. And he would come down every day and have a Budweiser in one hand and a wrench in the other, and Poop would sit and watch him wrench on the bikes. And my husband would go after work each day and spend time with his brother Kenny. And I'm not one that's an in charge. I need to stop you from hanging out with your friends. It's like, go. If you need a ride home because you drank, you need to park your bike, let me know. And have fun with your brother. See you when you get home. He's like, is there a catch to this? I'm like, no. But about 3 weeks in, he took me down to the shop to meet the boys. And I knew that was an honor because, again, I grew up in the good old boy cloth, and I have a respect for men and their space and, needing their boy time. And my husband wasn't out chasing skirts. He was hanging out with his brother, who he always hung out with before me. So why was I going to change that? So I get there to the shop and I'm meeting all the boys and stuff, and it was great. And Poop, the pit bull, was staring in the corner of the shop. Not right away when he met me, but later on in the conversation of hanging out and stuff, and Poop staring in the corner. And Kenny, my husband's brother, goes, damn, that dog freaks me out. He's always staring in the corner, and I was like, I wasn't going to say anything. I was not going to mess this relationship up. My husband was just my boyfriend at the time, and he was really good in bed. So there was that. And I had never told him anything. We're only 3 weeks in. I never told my ex, never. And, so, I didn't say anything that time. And Jim brought me back to the shop a few more times, and I was getting in with the boys, and that was great because I do love the boy time. I just didn't want to infringe on his. And about the third time back, Poop stared in the corner again, and he's just locked at visually locked in the corner, and you could not budge. That Kenny goes, damn, that dog's staring in the corner again, and he's like, watch this. And he's like, Poop, come on, man, you want some treats? Poop is a food-driven dog. Poop wouldn't budge. if he asked him if he wanted treats. He was just locked in the corner, just looking. And he's like, see, and he goes, that just freaks me out. And he turns around to me for whatever reason this day. Kenny locks eyes with me and he goes, what the fuck is that dog looking at? And for whatever reason, I answered that day. And I said, well, there's a big dog with like a long face and big ears that looks like a German Shepherd. And I said, there's another one that's like smaller and it looks like a coyote. I don't know what else it would be. And Kenny lost all the color in his face. And my boyfriend, who's now my husband, Jim, lost all the color in his face. And he looks at Jim and Jim's looking at him. And Kenny goes, did you say something to her? And Jim goes, well, fuck would I say that for? And he looks at me and he goes, hold on a second. And he goes to his toolbox and he pulls a drawer out and he's rifling around in there and he pulls out 2 pictures and he's like, this is Jake, my German Shepherd. And this is Pebbles. She really is a coyote. I pulled her out of the desert when she was a pup. And she was abandoned by her pack. And he's like, but they're dead. Yeah. And I said, yeah, but they used to watch you wrench on the bikes when you had them, and they still watch over you wrenching on the bikes, and Poop sees them in the corner. Mm-hmm. And he was like, whoa. And Jim was like, whoa. And they were like, and that was a lot for both of them to process, especially the one that was going home with me. But I always say I too am good in bed, so I kept him. And after that, yeah, it snowballed from there for me to be able to speak about it and to kind of share it in a way that I never want to be a parlor trick. Yeah. I don't want to be on display just because look at what she can do, which is why I don't want to do, shows and things like that. I'm not a parlor trick. I'm here to help heal. And so that was going to be the foundation for me finding the ability to start sharing with the world. Yeah.
I love that story for so many reasons. I love it. It's kind of like your coming out story. Mm-hmm. It validates your ability, but it also validates the fact that our pets can see things that we can't see. Because always. I think anybody that has a dog, and I don't know about cats, but we see them staring off sometimes, and you're like, what are you looking at? And you'll try to even call them, and they'll go right back to that spot.
So pay attention when that happens to what pops at you when you're seeing that. When you are seeing the dog go look at something, do you go, oh, I wonder if Shayna's here? Mm-hmm. Because when you're hearing that in your thoughts, you're hearing Shayna say, hey, that's me. I'm messing with a dog. Okay. When your dog's just having a fit and you're just pissed off about the fit, it's just a moment that day. You're like, hey, cut that crap out. But when your dog or cat, yes, cats can absolutely see spirit as well. All animals can, actually. Horses, there's no limits. Animals are actually super profound. But when I'd like to tell people, because you hear heaven all the time and you just don't know it. So when you see that reaction from your pet happening and your thoughts go to your loved one, like, I wonder if they're here, you're actually hearing them say, I am here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that is soul communication. And it's such a, easy thing to miss for people. And it's why I try to let you know, you can hear them too. You have unbreakable bonds with your loved ones.
Yeah. So. And it also validates what you said about heaven is 3 feet above the floor, which is another thing I tell people, because we think of it as a far off place. It's just another frequency, which is why it can overlap with where we are and why our pets can see and we can't, because they can see and hear things that we know that we can't see and hear.
Well, and you hear a lot of people say, so here's the thing, you hear somebody say, oh my gosh, I was in bed and I opened my eyes and I saw my grandmother floating in the room. Grandma wasn't floating. Grandma was just walking on heaven's floor. But it's an appearance of float because it's literally on our level, just a little bit above, so. Yeah. It's kind of cool. It's comforting knowing that they're so close, and then people freak out, how much can they see? And, I might mess with them and go, everything. But the truth is they had bodies once too. So they're not sitting there watching you on the potty, how's that going? They don't care. They're seeing you as souls. And they embrace your private moments for it to be yours too. I mean, they're with you always, but they're not looking at things. Yeah.
It's not really a curiosity for her at that point, right?
No, yeah, absolutely.
So, Fara, I know that, in addition to your mediumship and all your work with Helping Parent, you've written 4 books. So tell people about your books.
So my first book, Looking into the Windows of Heaven, was, just such a, like, I really wanted to introduce, what heaven is and where we come from, and talk about all the difficult subjects of loss as well, right? And, so it was my first book. And then I went on to Heaven is Within Us, because I felt like there was things that I didn't cover in the first book that I should add to the next one. I wanted to add some other difficult subjects like gay and transgender and all of those things to put soul perspective to those things. Because, and I will stop on that subject really quick and then talk about the other ones. But,
Sure.
when I say that we existed in heaven and we're all made in different light, we're each made male or female in heaven in spirit form, but we're not made to drive a car that matches the sex of the driver. And so, giving people perspective and understanding of why that gay and transgender, life was so very difficult to navigate is important for me too, because human judgment is meant to be, and it's meant to be hard for them, unfortunately. But they write a profound life as well, and that is not an easy one to navigate. And then I wrote a teaching book. So Heaven's Voice is Within Your Soul, because I had so little support and I had no training. I've never taken a class. I've never done anything. I don't meditate. I don't do any, there's definitely a lot of things that I tried to find my footing and understand myself. I tried tarot cards and I was like, yep, don't need it. I tried crystals. I'm like, what do these do? Like, I didn't need them, and then I realized if I threw everything earthly out the window, because my connection is directly to heaven, I didn't need earthly materialistic things to feel my connection. It's already there. So using those tools to find and develop and your abilities, not a problem. But if you realize that you have these built-in abilities and don't need any of those tools, it's an amazing thing too. I don't want to discount the tools, because some people find comfort in using them to make themselves feel, supported, and that's cool too. But I wrote that book to really teach you to challenge yourself, with your abilities. You may not have all the abilities that I have, but what if you can find one that you do have to find that extra connection with your loved one in heaven yourself?
Yeah.
And when I wrote that book, I remember my second stepmom that I had, she had said, why would you write that? You're going to lose business. Like, why would you write to teach other people to do this? And I looked at her and I said, you know what, if I could teach this entire world that they have unbreakable bonds and help them to find them, I'm blessed. But I knew it wasn't going to be the case. But what if I could reach a few,
Right.
and that was important to me. I'm not here for me. I'm here for this. And so that was, and then my fourth book, which is the one that I would recommend above all books for any type of physical loss that you've ever had, is How Do I Live Life When My Child Is in Heaven? And you can take the word child and use it for your child, or you can set the word child aside and use husband, wife, brother, sister, friend, whatever it is. That book, I wrote every bit of, like, why do we live a life? What is our soul purpose? And soul planning is in that book. And, and then I take you through baby loss at all levels, whether it's miscarriage or abortion or babies born sleeping, all the way to illness and disabilities and what's the purpose of that in life. Like, somebody that walks an illness and disability path is amazing, because they're paving the way for others in their shoes. They're educating doctors on their spiritual journey for new knowledge in the future to help others. Not everybody does that, and that is not an easy path to walk. And when there's misdiagnosis that happens and all of those things in this earthly sense, those things are devastating. But the truth is that soul was writing their life to have this disability or to have this, cancer journey or whatever it is. And they're writing to graduate from that. Then there's doctors, there's souls that are planning to be doctors saying, you know what, we heard you're going to graduate with your cancer. Do you mind keeping us in humble shoes on our journey? Because we hear there's a lot of ego in that earthly space. Is it okay if we make mistakes? Is it okay if we overlook things for you, since you're going to graduate from that anyway, so that you can keep us in humble shoes for patients later that we're meant to save? And, so all of those soul plans are so intertwined. And then I covered addiction, and also suicide and tragedy past things like car accidents or murders, all those things, because the purpose behind them and understanding and finding the beautiful in every terrible, even an addict, that is a terrible, terrible thing to navigate. I have two sisters who are addicts in life. They have navigated addiction and prison time and all of the things. They have grown our family in ways that we would have never grown without their struggles. And the truth is they're beautiful. Now, that doesn't mean I want to invite them over for dinner and have their friends in my home. And, so, there's things that come along with addiction that in the human sense are tough. But the truth is my sisters are beautiful for navigating that difficult journey and still navigating it. They both are. And that's okay. Yeah. It's part of life, and they're growing us, and we're loving and supporting them through their difficult journey. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, that's this conversation I love, because there are several basic questions that I try to answer with this podcast. It's like, who are we? Why are we here? Where did we come from? Where are we going? And those are the four things. And you've covered all of them, in this
We go
short
back to
period of time.
heaven the millisecond that we pass. There is no layover. People say like all the time, like, I've heard that you have to wait a certain amount of time to do a reading. Readings for you are really something that your heart is ready for. I've done readings the same day that somebody passed. And so there's no sense of time that you have to wait. But I always say, give yourself space and time for healing, find that connection within yourself, as well, but yeah, when they pass, they're perfect. It's you that's broken. And so give yourself time and compassion, to have an understanding of just at least getting through the fog, because grief is so difficult, but they are perfect. Yes, they can hear you. Yes, they can see you. Yes, they are part of your days. I challenge everyone's loved ones in my readings to give me like, okay, tell me something that your family just did that, like is new and, that's not on social media and all that. Here's the thing. I have to work around social media and Google and everything when I'm doing readings, because I want to give you faith that they carry on.
Right.
If I know all your crap, they've got to give me more than I know.
Yeah.
Or that anybody else would know, so like it's interesting what they'll come up with, but they want to validate their presence with you. They want you to know that they're still with you, and they're not held back by your tears. That's the other thing. Cry all you want. Don't ever let anybody tell you that you can't cry, because I can tell you that your tears are made of love. You're not holding them back from anything. They cannot be held back from heaven, actually. So, if anything, they're encouraging your smile. They're encouraging you to carry on and reach your dreams, because their life passing was not meant to defeat you and stop you from your soul purpose for yourself. And, but part of your soul purpose for yourself is walking and navigating through your grief.
Yeah.
And they know that you're doing that. They're proud of you. They're just like, wow, look at them go, and maybe you couldn't do Christmas this year because it was too hard. That doesn't mean they're not with you for Christmas. They'll still hang out with you with no tree. And they're fine with that.
Yeah.
So
Fara, is there anything that you wanted to talk about today that I haven't had a chance to ask you?
gosh, I don't know. I think that we've covered most of the things, actually. I mean, if there's anything you want me to speak on, I'm here, but
no, I think you've done an excellent job. I think we've come kind of full circle and answered, the basic questions that I like to answer. We talked about, your abilities. We've talked about, and people can tell, because, there's this thing. Some people say, well, all mediums they're frauds. They're, and I've known you for years. I've known several mediums for years, and I can guarantee you that mediums are absolutely real and are here to serve.
It's unfortunate because there are so many mediums out there who are not authentic. And that is where that reputation comes from, because there are truly blessed people in this world that are really living the purpose of helping this world to carry on their soul journeys. And I'm blessed to be one of them, but I am not the only one. There's a lot of beautiful souls out there who are definitely beautifully connected. But then there's the people who are like the woo-woo into the oogie boogie, and they think that like spirituality is so cool. So they start studying it a little bit. And they're like, I'm a medium.
Yeah.
And then they say the things like, oh, sorry, couldn't make a connection for you today because your kid's stuck in limbo. Kindly throat punch them. I'm just kidding. Don't ever let anybody give you anything in a reading that makes you feel like there's turmoil. A reading with an authentic medium should feel like a visit with heaven. It
Yeah.
should feel like it is just I should almost kind of disappear in that connection because you're feeling them so profoundly. It's like you're talking to them. And
Yeah.
that's what's important to me. Yeah, but there is, I mean, it is the day and age of Google, you guys. We can't control that. I have people all the time like that will book 3 people deep because they don't want me to know who they are. I'm like, I don't care. Heaven knows who you are. Go ahead. Like,
Yeah.
but even if I do a reading for one of my own friends, I will just challenge them, give me stuff that I wouldn't know. So if there's things that you have on social media and you're going to like be booking with a medium and you like put everything out there on your social media, set your social media account as private, guys. I mean, there's steps that you can take to ensure that nobody's able to look you up in that sense, and they shouldn't be only giving you things that could be found on social media, like if you did a balloon release or something last week and then you posted pictures or whatever. We're not
Hmm.
doing balloons anymore, I know. Sorry birds.
Yeah.
But if you did something, and then they're bringing that up first, yeah, they might have looked you up or whatever, but heaven is capable of giving us things that nobody would know. And it may be silly crap like, wow, like you just had to reset the toilet in the master bathroom.
Yeah.
And it's little things like that I love it when they show me. They're like, son, how did you know that? Because that's not something they told the world,
Yeah, well,
and
and I've seen you, Farah, in a room with
yeah.
hundreds of people, and you don't know who's going to be in that room, and you
Mm-mm.
say things like that. So there's just not even humanly possible.
Chris Ryan's,
Yeah,
reading, which, I'm so proud of Chris's growth, but that 7 minutes, that I went to he and Sin, at that conference, and his son was talking about him redoing the deck and how he had screwed it up and he had like
yes,
started pouring the resin and it didn't match. And that was Chris's like, oh my gosh, this was not on social media. There's no way she would know this. I didn't even know who, I've never even met Chris and Sin before that. It's funny because most of the people at the conference know who Farah is. And
yeah,
I love the ones that don't
yeah.
because sometimes they get the most beautiful aha moments, and seeing Chris's growth from that moment to, because he was just there with his wife. So, like to
Right.
support. And then he moved to a place of support for dads and for the group. And I'm so proud of him, and writing the Helping Fathers Heal book with the dads. And yeah, like,
And that is an example of, like you said earlier, you don't want to be a part. You're not a parlor trick. The
mm-mm.
purpose of mediumship is healing.
Yeah,
The purpose
it
of
is.
mediumship is making connection. It's healing. It's not a
Yeah.
magic trick. It's not a mentalist thing. It's so that people can have faith that their loved one is okay, that they want us to
Yes.
continue. It's a beautiful thing. It's a ministry. It's a service.
It is. You know what? My boss is God, and I'm blessed for that. And you guys can call it anything that you like. Please know that I am so respectful of everybody's choice in words and religion and all of those things.
Right.
But I absolutely am blessed to have the most amazing boss that just puts me in the right place at the right time for a need. And that's what's important, because there's nothing like, I was walking in a grocery store, and this lady came running at me and she grabbed hold of me, trembling and crying. And she said, Farah, you saved my life.
Hmm.
And I have had so many people say those words to me. Some of them I haven't even done readings for, you guys. Some of them it's just they've read what I've written and it saved their life. So the
Yeah.
purpose behind everything that I've written is truly inspired by heaven. Every word, and the I do have that one here. The How Do I Live Life When My Child is in Heaven book. This one, every single word in this book is inspired by heaven. It was an ask of heaven, like literally. And I talk about that in the book as well. But
Hmm.
yeah, it'll help you to find the beautiful and the terrible.
Yeah. Well, I know you're really busy and really popular. Do you still take people for readings?
I do. I'm scheduling typically 8 months out at a time. So,
Okay.
people have to be patient when it comes to getting into my schedule. But I always say an honest reading is truly worth the wait. If you feel like you can't wait 8 months, do your research on the person you are scheduling with. Most mediums will have a bit of a wait. I mean, and some of them, I mean, gosh, you guys, when I started, I was an honest medium and I didn't have a wait at all. You know what I mean? So some of
Right.
them may be new in their footing and not have, too much of a wait. But do your research, talk to people, you guys can, probably, if it's child passings, you can get on Helping Parents Heal website. They have, tested the mediums, and they have a list of trusted mediums, or post on social media and ask if anybody, as long as you're okay with posting about a medium, because some people get blasted from depending on who's on your page, right? But, talk to your people, ask them who they've had an honest experience with. But an honest reading is truly worth the wait. And again, I'm not the only one who can give an honest reading, but I have a style that's a little bit different than some, because I grew up in that good old boy cloth. I don't have a filter. So if your loved one was cussy, let's roll. And I have a no BS style because, and I'll tell one more story. And where that foundation of that no BS style came from too is, so I told you about the bike shop and the poop story. And it was just a few months later after that happened, we got a call that one of our buddies from the bike shop had just lost his best friend to suicide that day. We needed to get on the bikes, roll down to the bar because he was by himself at the bar, and we needed to get down to the bar to be there for him. And so we did. So Kenny from the bike shop jumped on his bike. I jumped on the back of Jim's bike, and we rolled down to this bar. And our buddy Rudy is sitting at the bar, and he's by himself, and he's drinking beer, and he is not in a good place. His best friend Beaver took his life, left a letter of love for Rudy, and some of his materialistic things for Rudy. And Rudy was not processing this well. And I was just sitting at the table, letting the boys be there for him. Really not much needed to be said. They just needed to be present for him. And, we needed to get him out of the bar and get him back to the shop. And, so we sat there for a little bit. And as we're sitting there and the boys are just interacting with him, I'm hearing his buddy who passed, tell him I love him, tell him I'm with him, tell him I love him, tell him I'm with him, tell him I love him, tell him I'm with him. It's just over and over in my, spirit, like mind, communication. And I'm just sitting there acting like nothing's going on, like I'm not hearing this. And I'm telling his buddy, F you, dude. If you want me to tell him something like that, you need to give me something that will catch his attention that I would not know. Because if I reach across this stupid table right now and say to him, Rudy, he loves you and he's with you, anybody could say that. Right. And I learned that fluff isn't healing. And, and so for that reason, I will not say it first. I might say it at the end, and I will say it at the end, but I have to validate their presence first. So I said, you give me something that I could tell Rudy and that I wouldn't know. And he showed me a big Coors Light can and a big FU to Budweiser. And he showed me them going out target shooting together, but only one time. Like they went out target shooting in the desert. And I was like, okay, fair enough. Not my place to judge what they're giving me. It's just my place to say it. Well, in the bar, it was not the place to say it. So I waited. And we got Rudy out of the bar and we got him back to the bike shop. And now we're at the bike shop, and Rudy needed some air. And he went out front on the pillar at the industrial, plaza that we were at, and was sitting outside with his hands in his face. And I told my then boyfriend, Jim, I said, hey, I need to go talk to Rudy really quick. And he goes, Rudy doesn't need any mothering. And I already knew that. And I said, yeah, that weird thing that I did, a little, and he's like, oh, go do it. Well, the cool thing is, I get it, because Rudy didn't need any mothering right then. And I understand how guys work with their emotions, but he needed this moment. And so I went outside, and he didn't pull his head out of his hands. And I kneeled down in front of him, and I put my hands on his knees, and I said, Rudy, and he didn't budge. And I said, you went target shooting with Beaver, but only one time, didn't you? And he pulls his head out of his hands and he goes, how the F did you know that? And I said, well, Annie was showing me a big Coors Light and a big FU to Budweiser. And he smiled and he goes, that's Beaver. And I said, well, now I can tell you that he loves you and he's with you. So catching his attention was something I wouldn't know helped me to deliver the message of love. Because you guys, literally, everybody's always like, what's their big message for me? I feel like they need to get a message across. And I feel like they have no need, none. Their message is always, I love you, I'm with you, I see you. And it's our place to validate that.
Right.
So,
yeah. Awesome. I love that. Thank you for sharing that story.
Yeah.
So, Fara, how can people reach you?
So through my website, faragibson.com, F-A-R-A, four-letter word, Faragibson.com is my website. I keep my phone number private, guys, because my phone would go off the hook all day.
Yeah.
But honestly, my Facebook page, even if you never book a reading, Fara Gibson Psychic Medium, again, it's F-A-R-A, four-letter word. Yes, I was named after Farrah Fawcett, but Dad couldn't spell. And if you go to that page, you guys, I put so much love into that page, and I
You
write and share
absolutely
so
do.
much every day to cover every grief topic that there is, because even if the world never books a reading with me, maybe I can help you with a poem that I've written. My poems, you guys, are all inspired by heaven, and I typically write them from the perspective of heaven to you. And it's not by chance if you come across one of those poems and you feel your loved one in it, because they made sure you saw it.
Yeah.
I write and share a lot on that page. That's really the best page to start. And again, that book, How Do I Live Life When My Child Is in Heaven, is the best place to start to get a complete foundation of like soul planning and why we do this and all of that background and jazz. So
And I want to confirm your Facebook page. You're so generous. You do give away so much with your writing and stuff there. So people, as you said, if you've never booked a reading with Fara, go and follow her on Facebook at a minimum. Fara, thank you so much for doing this. I know you're crazy busy, so I really appreciate it.
I really appreciate you having me. And I was just teasing about not getting me in your schedule sooner. You know what? This was perfect timing. Thank you so much, Brian, for having me. And thank you for all you do. You're amazing. You're amazing. You have turned your grief into lifting others. And I'm so proud of you.
Thank you. I appreciate that one. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, you too.
Have you ever wished for gentle guidance or a comforting word exactly when you need it most? Well, I've created my Love Lives On Oracle deck just for that purpose. Now, this isn't a deck that's about predictions. It's about connection. Every card has been thoughtfully designed to guide you through life's toughest moments, to illuminate your path and help to remind you that you're never alone, that your loved ones are always there right beside you. So whether you're seeking clarity, comfort, or a loving message from beyond, each card is here to speak directly to your soul. And along with the deck comes a downloadable PDF guide that you can use that will give you an affirmation for the day, something to reflect on, and even an activity to do to keep you connected to your loved one. So check out the Love Lives On Oracle deck today. You can get it at stan.store/grief to growth. Stan.store, STAN.store/grief, numeral 2, growth.